The devastation caused by the nuclear accident at Chernobyl is well known. But the full story of the massive effort to contain the disaster has never been told. More than 500,000 Soviet men and women risked everything.
Thousands ultimately sacrificed their lives in a desperate struggle to prevent a far greater catastrophe. A second explosion 10 times more powerful than Hiroshima that could wipe out a half of Europe.
This is the heroic and tragic story of the Battle of Chernobyl.
There has been a nuclear accident in the Soviet Union.
There are conflicting reports coming out of the Soviet Union. We do know that a zone of deadly radiation is being released from the damaged plant.
The Soviet version is this. One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant in the city of Kiev was damaged, and there is speculation in Moscow that people were injured and may have died.
The resulting steam explosion and fire released at least 5% of the radioactive reactor core into the atmosphere and downwind. The accident claimed 30 lives, including 28 from radiation exposure. Its radiation level was much higher than the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan during World War II. Large areas of Belarus, Ukraine, Russia and beyond were also contaminated with radiation in varying degrees. This nuclear disaster was a unique event and the only accident in the history of commercial nuclear power where radiation-related fatalities occurred. 70% of the radioactive fallout from Chernobyl landed in Belarus, affecting more than 2.5 million people. Radioactivity fallout carried by the wind was found later in the UK, Europe, and even in the United States. Many of the fire and rescue workers who tried to bring the accident under control suffered from acute radiation sickness. A monument of the workers who died has been erected in Chernobyl city, funded by the families of the workers rather than the government. The engraved plate reads, "For those who save the world," and is a statement to the human sacrifice and cost in the development for controlled technology. Radioactive fallout and the disaster caused a health risk to people even today, because of the particles build up in the food chain cycle much more rapidly than they can decay. The power plant of Chernobyl is next to the river Pripyat, which leads into one of the largest surface water systems in Europe. Contaminants from the plant, which made their way into the drinking water system, were a major concern for months. Accumulation of radioactive particles made fish from this water system unsafe to eat for years after the accident. At the time of the meltdown of the 4th reactor, 2 of the other reactors were under construction, but the construction efforts were abandoned. The cooler towers from the reactors are short distance away. Approaching the 4th reactor, ambient radiation rises exponentially with every step. At a distance of only a few hundred meters, these levels are approximately 40 times greater than normal. The nearby city of Pripyat was not immediately evacuated after the incident. The townspeople went about their usual business, completely oblivious to what just happened. However, within a few hours of the explosion, dozens of people fell ill. Later, they report severe headaches and metallic taste in their mouths, along with uncontrollable fits of coughing and vomiting. The general population of Soviet Union was first informed of the disaster on April 28th, 2 days after the explosion, with a 20-second announcement in a TV news program. At the time, the ABC released its report about the disaster. During that time, all radio broadcasts run by the state were replaced with classical music, which was a common method of preparing the public for an announcement of a tragedy that had taken place. Scientist teams were armed and placed on alert as instructions were awaited. In the aftermath of the accident, 237 people suffered from acute radiation sickness, of whom 31 died within the first 3 months. Most of the victims were fire and rescue workers trying to bring the accident under control, who were not fully aware of how dangerous the exposure to radiation in the smoke was. The 2005 Chernobyl Forum report revealed thyroid cancer among children to be one of the main health impacts from the Chernobyl accident. In that publication, more than 4,000 cases were reported, and there was no evidence of an increase in solid cancers or leukemia. After the disaster, 4 square kilometers of pine forest directly downwind of the reactor turned reddish brown and died, earning the name of the Red Forest. Some animals in the worst hit areas also died or stopped reproducing. It is difficult to establish the total economic cost of the disaster. According to Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet Union spent 8 billion rubles, the equivalent of US 18 billion at that time, on containment and decontamination, virtually bankrupting itself. It will always remind the entire human race that we should turn to renewable energy rather than these kind of sources of energy that can cause destruction and long-term damage to us and the earth. Many organizations like Greenpeace are now forcing world leaders to start using green energy rather than petroleum or nuclear plants. We must start the change now, or we should wait for another tragedy like this. Let us secure a greener, safer and pollution-free future for our children's children.